everybody, welcome to another edition of Toddster's Magical Mystery Review. I'm your host Toddster, and today we're going to take a look at a very, very fine album entitled Band on the Run by Paul McCartney and Wings. Yes, came out December 7th, 1973 on Apple Records, and yeah, this is a very awesome album. Yeah, so okay, so what were Wings up to by this point? Well, Wings by this stage was Paul and Linda, Denny Lane, Henry McCulloch, and Denny Seiwell, and they just did the theme tune to Live and Let Die, and so Paul was planning out to make another record, and they thought that they would go somewhere exotic to make a record, and so he found a list of all EMI studios around the world, and he sort of thought of Lagos in Nigeria, and they thought, great. But yet the day before they were about to leave, Henry McCulloch and Denny Seiwell both dropped out. They left the band, and so first there was a bit panic. Oh, the band's breaking up, but in the end, Paul said, right, we're gonna make the best album. We're gonna show these suckers. We're gonna make the best album that they'll regret. And so that's what they did. Even though the studio in Lagos was not in the best condition. They were still fixing. They were still in repairs in some parts of the studio, and not only that, Paul and Linda was almost mugged one night. But apart from all that, what came out was an awesome focused album. So let's go with the song. Let's get into the song. So we start off with the title song, Band on the Run. Yeah, and Paul said that it's sort of inspired by the occasional drug busts of rock stars at that time, with the Beatles and the Stones and all those and all the others, and also inspired by a quote that George had said in a meeting in Apple, if I ever get out of here and all that. But yeah, it's sort of like a mini suite with sort of like 3 different parts. You sort of had the little ballad type part, stuck inside these 4 walls, and then this gets into the more funky bits, if I ever get out of here, and then to the main bits, Band on the Run, and yeah, and in my opinion, it's probably his best song, best solo song, that he did, and yeah, it's a instant classic, right up there with the greats. And then we move on to another hit single, Jet. Yeah, the title was inspired by Paul's pet retriever. Yeah, and as for the song, who knows? Maybe Paul had some cups of tea while writing that song. But yeah, it's still another classic from Macca. And then we go into Bluebird, which Paul wrote, in On Holiday in Jamaica, and yeah, it's a beautiful song, and the harmonies of Superior, and yet the sax solo from Howie Casey, whom he would tour with Paul later on, is the icing on the cake, and yeah, it's a lovely song. And then we go into Mrs. Vanderbilt. Yeah, it's sort of inspired by a musical entertainer called Charlie Chester. With the little laughter. Ho, hey ho. Yeah, and it's recently been a live favorite, and in his concerts, and and I was lucky to catch it on one of his shows a few years ago. And speaking of live staples, this one is definitely another one of his. Let Me Row It. Yeah, and it's I guess Paul was inspired by George's "I'd Have You Anytime." In fact, that's probably the first thing he sang on that song. Let me roll it, um, and then but yet the song has sort of like a Lennon-esque feel, and some say that it was another reply from Paul to John. But yeah, it's a pretty awesome tune and a great riff as well. So we flipped the record into side two. Mamunia, and yes, this was inspired by a hotel in Marrakesh called Mamunia, and yet the song uses rain as a metaphor, of going through some rough times, and yeah, it's another good song, yeah. And then we move on to No Words. Yeah, this is the first Paul and Denny Lane co-write. Yes, it's probably the weakest song of the album, but it's a good leak. It's there's not a bad song on this album. It's a good song, but compared to the others, it doesn't grab it a bit, but anyway, then we go into Picasso's last words, "Drink to Me." Yeah, this was sort of a Paul was being met with Dustin Hoffman, and he sort of challenged Paul. He's like, I bet you can't write a song about anything. And so Dustin grabbed an article about Picasso's death, and Paul made up the tune by then. Drink to me, drink to my health. Yeah, and yet the song uses past refrains from Jet and Mrs. Vanderbilt, and yeah, it's another great song. And then we end the album with 1985. Yeah, the lyrics may be a bit silly, but the music and the arrangement are suspenseful, and then it finally ends with a bit of Band on the Run, which goes all full circle, and yeah, such a perfect ending to a perfect album. Yeah, and yeah, let's talk about the Helen Wheels single, which came out as a bonus in when it came out in re-released on CD back in the 90s. So yeah, talk about Helen Wheels. Yeah, it's just sort of like a British version of like a Beach Boys surfing car tune. Like 409 Little Deuce Coupe. Yeah, yeah, this was named after their Land Rover, which they call it Helen Wheels, and yeah, it's an okay single. Nothing significant about it. Then we go into the B-side, Country Dreamer. Yeah, this was an outtake from the Red Rose Speedway sessions. Yeah, and this was also considered to be on the proposed double album before they condensed it into a single album. Yeah, this is another one of Paul's country tunes, and yeah, it's okay. Yeah, so what to say about this album? Well, what an album this is. Yeah, this it may took a few albums for Paul to make a perfect album. To get the the critics' approval, and this is it. This is the album that made it, and yeah, yeah, this is right up there in my top 5 favorite Paul solo albums. Yeah, so as far as ranking, I would give this 4.5 Pauls out of 5. So there you have it. Band on the Run by Paul McCartney and Wings. My name's Toddster, and you just watched another Magical Mystery review, and I'll see you next time. Until then, toodaloo.